Order 66 and the Siege of Mandalore marked the end of the Clone Wars series. It was a symbolic conclusion to a time period that had displayed these soldiers' rise to fandom. As I mentioned in part 1, which you should check out if you haven't already, the series finale gave me a sense of closure. Despite the heartbreak and sadness, I accepted that the clone story had ended. It felt okay knowing that Rex made it through, that the Republic had collapsed, and that the clones would likely fall with it. Yet only a few months later, everything changed.
A test is in order. 5 enhanced clones? More capable than an army.
In July of 2020, the Bad Batch animated series got announced. Clone Force 99, consisting of Hunter, Wrecker, Crosser, Tech, and Echo that we had only gotten glimpses of in a 4-episode arc in Season 7, would return to Star Wars in 2021. And once the series arrived, it was like Clone Wars and animated Star Wars never had left. The show threw us straight into the action with Order 66 from an entirely different perspective. Episode 1, called Aftermath, is fascinating because as the audience you get to experience this iconic event from the point of view of the only clone troopers in the entire army that didn't follow the order. Well, except for Crosshair.
What are you doing? Following orders.
It once again drove home the idea that most clones right there and then had very little choice in the matter, and that Palpatine controlled them like puppets on a string.
Still don't think the regs are programmed?
This episode also introduced something entirely new, a female clone called Omega that didn't have any H acceleration.
Hello.
This was at the time a big revelation because Star Wars had never even mentioned this as a possibility other than Boba Fett himself. It opened up a new world of ideas, hinting at the fact that the Kaminoans had more than one plan for the clones. And by the end of the first episode, you realized Omega's importance and that she most likely would play a big part in the stories to come. Even though Season 1 of The Bad Batch focused most of its attention on Clone Force 99, it began the mission of showcasing the consequences of Order 66 and the interesting transition period between the Fallen Republic and the newly formed Empire. With characters like Admiral Rampart and Tarkin himself downplaying the clones' importance, and the Empire's recruitment of galaxy-wide mercenaries, it foreshadowed their slow descent. What struck me the most was how quickly the loyal and brave soldiers of the Republic turned into unemotional robots. Sure, Order 66 had a big effect on their behavior, yet afterwards most of the clones went along with their lives like nothing had happened. It made me wonder whether they didn't realize what they had done, or if Order 66 was something that slowly got erased from their memories. Nevertheless, their loyalty for the Empire were as strong as for the Republic, excluding a few ones that saw through the lies of this newly formed regime.
That blast didn't come from Cham or his fighters.
Is that so? Then please enlighten me. Who is responsible?
In the 2-episode storyline set on Ryloth, we meet Hauser, a clone captain who had fought alongside Cham Syndulla and the people of Ryloth during the Clone Wars. These 2 episodes stood out in the first season because for the first time with quote-unquote regular clones, they displayed that they could change, that some of them wouldn't blindly follow injustice happening right in front of them. It marked the beginning of the clones breaking free from the chains that the Empire had forged, and it was the first step in them realizing that they were trapped in a corrupt organization that cared only about power.
We came here to free Ryloth from Separatist control, and we succeeded. But look around you. We're now being ordered to target the very people we swore to protect, and I will not be a part of it any longer.
Look at this. These are not clone troopers.
That's what I've been trying to tell you. These are our replacements.
By the end of Season 1, the Stormtrooper makes its first appearance, demonstrating a shift of power in the army of the Empire. Palpatine had begun to realize that the clones were too unpredictable, that they didn't always follow orders like the quote-unquote good soldier should do. Uprisings like the one on Ryloth were becoming more and more common, forcing Admiral Rampart to take drastic measures to restore order.
Sir, we're in position.
Open fire.
With the clone homeworld of Kamino being bombarded and buried by the Star Destroyer's relentless fire, it was impossible to ignore their tragic end. Watching it get destroyed was emotional. A place filled with so many memories and iconic moments erased from existence.
Cities have been destroyed, sir. All Kaminoan facilities have collapsed.
And as the Bad Batch left Kamino, some of the final memories of Clone Wars faded away with them. The dark times had truly begun, and Season 2 would not shy away from exploring that grim reality.
Sir, I will not falsify an official report.
I will.
During this era in Star Wars, there were a lot of unique clones still alive, but sadly things didn't turn out well for many of them. Episode 3 of Season 2, titled The Solitary Clone, focusing on Commander Cody and Crosshair, is a great example of this.
Rumors are more and more clones have been questioning the Order.
Then they are traitors. Like the Jedi.
It's a fantastic episode that pays attention on how the Empire's harsh methods, especially through Crosshair and the Lieutenant, makes Cody question everything he believes in, including the cause he's been fighting for all his life.
Sir, I promised a peaceful...
You did, I didn't. Now execute her.
So much for peace.
The Senator's words cuts through him like a sharp knife, because deep down he had all along known that what the Empire is doing is far from honorable.
You know what makes us different from battle droids? We make our own decisions, our own choices. And we have to live with them too.
As Cody points out, clones were never meant to be like battle droids, but what's both tragic and ironic is that the Empire turned them into something very similar. Suddenly they were expected to follow strict orders without question. Instead of using their names, the Empire just called them by their numbers, and once their service was done, no one cared about them anymore.
After all they have sacrificed, you now wish to discard them, leave them with nothing. Is that how we repay them for their service?
In the mid-season 2-parter, we get to follow Senator Shuchi on the almost impossible mission of securing justice for the clones' sacrifices. There is so many layers to this story, and while it's beyond tragic to observe the corrupt Senate deal with the clone problem, the real dilemma lies in one single question.
And what happens when you're too old to fight?
It brings us back to the Umbara arc and the conversation between Rex and Fives regarding the very same topic.
That someday, this war is gonna end. Then what? We're soldiers. What happens to us then?
It's a complicated issue. On one hand, clones were created to be soldiers, designed to fight. But on the other hand, they can't fight forever, and they deserve a life beyond bloodshed and death. But can they actually be something else? If you look at troopers like Echo and Rex, it's obvious that they can't stop. That whenever they see wrongdoings, they have to act. While others like the Bad Batch that has created a family more or less seeks a peaceful life that doesn't involve war. However, whatever these individuals wished to become, they all wanted the truth about how Kamino out of nowhere disappeared. And Senator Shuchi, together with Rex and the Bad Batch, managed to make that happen.
I was following orders! I was following...
With Admiral Rampart being exposed for his heinous actions, you might have thought that the clones would finally find some hope at the end of the story, that they would be celebrated for their actions and not forgotten. But Palpatine had other plans, and like many times before, he twisted the situation to his advantage.
The fact that the clones under his command so blindly followed orders inflicting such carnage without hesitation gives me pause. We shall usher in a new era, heralded by the Imperial Stormtrooper.
At this point, the story of the clones had hit rock bottom. Outmaneuvered by Palpatine, their fate was now tied to the Empire's cloning programs. There was no longer any rules, no honor nor loyalty, something even the devoted Crosshair eventually had to realize.
We're good soldiers. We followed orders. And for what? That
the Empire didn't care about the clones was already well established, but it can't get more apparent than in the episode called The Outpost, when Crosshair and Mayday finds out the truth regarding what they have been guarding this whole time. Against almost impossible odds, Crosshair manages to get an injured Mayday back to base, yet the return didn't turn out as expected.
You could have saved him.
Perhaps you didn't hear me. He is expendable. As are you.
It's one of the most powerful moments in the series, when the fiercely loyal Crosshair, who had done everything in his power to support the Empire, finally stands up for what's right. He might not have done it for the good of his heart, nor for glory. Rather, he did it for his brother Mayday, and without knowing it himself, for all the other clones that had been wrongfully dealt with. It symbolizes that despite the differences in opinions among the clone brothers, their bond ultimately transcends everything else. The moment shows that sometimes orders are just orders, and that you can choose your own path, something Clone Trooper Tech unfortunately demonstrated in the season finale.
Don't you do it, Tech!
When have we ever followed orders?
Even if this moment on its own isn't that significant for the overall story of the clones, it's absolutely worth highlighting. Tech might have been the most unique clone in Star Wars, with his odd social behavior and brilliant mind, and throughout Season 2 you had gotten to understand him on a deeper level than ever before.
I may process moments and thoughts differently, but it does not mean that I feel any less than you.
We have not always agreed with Crosshair, but he is still our brother. We do not leave our own behind.
This loyalty between them is both their greatest strength and their biggest weakness, as it often puts the clones in tough situations. Like for instance Clone Force 99 at the end of the season, with Tech dead as well as Crosshair and Omega captured.
We are going to get her back. And we don't stop searching until we do.
The Dark Times are undoubtedly a somber chapter in the clones' story, but moments like, for instance, this one with Crosshair or Hauser throwing down his weapon, not to talk about Commander Cody's iconic statements, reminds us of why it's worth cherishing their journey, and why we have grown to love these characters so much. And with this, the second part of the clones' crazy story comes to an end. Yet there is still a lot more to delve into, so stay tuned for part 3. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you will have a great day.